is Connie Rapp. I was born in upstate New York, a small town called Troy, which is just a few miles from the state capital of Albany. I was born in 1942.
Connie was drafted into the Army in February 1964 in his hometown of Troy, New York. He was stationed at Fort Dix, New Jersey, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Seoul, Korea, and the Republic of Vietnam. During his tour in Vietnam, he was attached to the 61st Aviation Company as an assistant crew chief as part of the Military Assistance Command. Amongst the schools he attended in the military, he lists Basic Paratrooper Jump School, Fort Benning, GA, and Aviation Ground School at Fort Rucker, Alabama.
What was your job in the military and how long were you in the military service?
I was in for 2 years, a little over 2 years. Then I was in the reserves for another 3.5 years. My job was to be a crew chief on an Army aircraft, the Caribou. It was my job to make sure that all the maintenance had been pulled on the aircraft before we took it out in the mornings, to make sure if we had a load of supplies and stuff, that it was tied down properly, stuff like that.
How did you feel about being sent to Vietnam prior to going?
Well, actually, I volunteered to go to Vietnam. I was in Korea, South Korea at the time, and I decided I wanted to see what this war was all about.
Do you have a family?
Yes, I do. I've been married for 46 years now. My wife and I live in Irvine. We have one daughter, Kimberly Rapp, who happens to be a teacher at Corona Del Mar.
What was a typical day like for you during your tour in Vietnam?
Pretty much like a regular job. I mean, we would, we'd get up probably around, I think, 6:30 in the morning, go to have breakfast at the mess hall. We then, those of us that, were involved in flying and all would usually go and check on the plane, make sure the maintenance had been pulled overnight that we had written up the day before. Then about 7:30 in the morning, we would, most of the planes would take off to fly up to Saigon, which was only about a 20-minute flight. And we would get our orders for the day up there, pick up any supplies we needed, or if we were going to transport some troops. The aircraft that we flew was a de Havilland Caribou.
The Caribou is a twin-engine, short takeoff and landing STOL utility transport built by the De Havilland Aircraft of Canada Limited. It is used primarily for tactical airlift missions in forward battle areas with short, unimproved airstrips. It can carry 26 fully equipped paratroopers or up to 20 litter patients. As a cargo aircraft, the Caribou can haul more than 3 tons of equipment. The Caribou's STOL capability made it particularly suitable for delivering troops, supplies, and equipment to isolated outposts.
Were you ever directly involved in combat?
We were shot at a few times. I was wounded one time just before my tour was up in January of '66. We were on a run to a special forces camp, and we had radioed in to see if the strip was cleared to land and secure. We were told it was secure, but when the guy that answered the radio told us, he whispered it. We should have known from that it wasn't secure if he's whispering it. And so when we went into land, we started taking fire. I got shrapnel in the leg. The assistant crew chief, he was hit in the knee. The pilot immediately aborted the landing and turned around and took us back down to Saigon. Luckily, it wasn't that bad as far as I was concerned. I went in the hospital for 2 days and was out. The other guy, he ended up, he got discharged. He had a severe injury to his knee, and so he probably would have to wear a brace probably the rest of his life, I would guess. But so yeah, once in a while you would, be involved in some sort of combat, but nothing like an infantryman would go through. We were lucky.
Can you tell me about some of your most memorable experiences in Vietnam?
Well, probably the most memorable was the day that I was wounded, as I already told you about. But there was another occasion where we were up flying, and on one of our runs, we were told that the runway wasn't secure. So instead of landing, we did what they call LOLAX, which is where the back end of the aircraft has like a ramp and an upper door that can sort of open up like so. And the pilot would make a low pass over the runway, and we would roll the stuff out the back end on pallets with drag chutes. And so that, that would slow it. The pallets would come off, land on the runway, and they'd still be, because of the forward motion, still be going, but the drag chutes would deploy, and that would slow them up and stop them. So anyway, we were making one of these passes, and there were some 55-gallon drums at the far end of this strip. And these are only dirt strips that we're talking about. They're not concrete or paved or anything like that. So anyway, the pilot went long on his approach, and when he pulled up, he's got his landing gear down, okay? When he pulled up, one of the wheels hit the top of this 55-gallon drum and turned the wheel sideways. So now we have to fly back down to our base in Phong Tau, and we've got to leave the landing gear down, of course, because we can't retract it, and we're trying to figure out what's going to happen when we get there. Now, at our base, we have what they call a perforated steel grating that is laid down and used as runways. So we get down there, we had radioed in, told them what had happened, and they went and they phoned down the runway. And this pilot, who happened to be the executive officer of our company that day, he put it down, and I mean, one of the softest landings I have ever. He landed sort of to the left on the good wheel, and then set the tail down. And once that tire that wheel that was turned hit, it just sort of skidded along the foam, and we landed perfectly. But I'm sure there were some of us thought this was probably the last landing we were going to feel. But that was one of the most interesting things that happened to me over there.
What was it like coming back home after being in the military?
It was interesting at that time, because that's that was when the whole thing with the Vietnam War started changing, where people started turning against the war. We were told when we came back in, I came back into to Oakland Army Terminal in Northern California, and I went through the process of being discharged, and I was told, don't wear my uniform outside of in the airport when I was going home, because in order to get the military reduced rate, you needed to wear your uniform. But don't wear it outside in the city if you're going to be in, especially in San Francisco, you know, and all. Now, I didn't see any protesters. It was probably, you know, another year later when they really started getting active. But so when I get home, you know, it was strange. People knew I had been in Vietnam. Not too many people would ask me about it. Not too many people. So I never really talked too much about Vietnam. And that went on for a number of years. I mean, it wasn't until probably in the 1990 or later that I really started opening up and talking about it. I started getting involved in military veterans organizations. I belong to the American Legion here in Newport Beach. I'm a lifetime member of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, a few others. And but before that time, you know, Vietnam veterans were not really, I don't want to say we were disliked, but we just weren't the favorites at that time. So I just really never talked too much about it.
Do you feel your time in the military was time well spent?
Definitely. It made me grow up. I mean, when I went in, I was, you know, even though I was 22, which was old for Vietnam. I mean, most of the guys being drafted back then were 18 and 19 years old. But being 22, I still was, you know, was a kid. I was first time away from home. And also, yeah, it taught me a lot. I really learned a lot about the world from being in the military.
Looking back on that period, is there anything you would do differently or change?
No, not the only thing I would do differently is if like I say, I really like the military. I think if I hadn't planned on getting married, I would have stayed in the military. But I don't think, I mean, it's just hard on a family military life. And my sister was married to a lifer in the Navy, and, you know, I seen, you know, how hard it was on her always moving and everything else. So I just felt it wasn't fair, you know, so I didn't stay in. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
How do you compare the war our country is currently engaged in with the Vietnam War?
On a lot of levels, it's very comparable. I think we're going about it the wrong way, the same way we did with Vietnam. We got into this thing with no set goal in mind. It's my feeling that when you go into a war, you need to go into it with the goal of achieving something good out of it, and that comes by winning. And if you're not going to fight a war to win the war, then don't get involved in it. I think that right now Iraq is worse than it was before we went in. Afghanistan isn't much better, and it's just going to get worse when we leave. So what do we accomplish? The only thing we accomplished is we lost a lot of young men and women that shouldn't have been lost because we didn't have the right goal set when we went in there.
Connie's military honors include the following medals and awards: Purple Heart, Army Air Medal, Army Commendation Medal, Good Conduct Medal, National Defense Medal, U.S. Vietnam Service Medal, Korean Defense Service Medal, the Vietnam Campaign Medal, Paratrooper Wings, Army Aircrew Wings, Army Unit Presidential Citation, and RVN Gallantry Cross Unit Citation.